Hi, I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler with the Oakland A's High A affiliate, the Lansing Lugnuts.
I'm Alex Jensen with the Oakland A's Low A affiliate, the Stockton Ports.
We're going to talk about the players. We're going to talk about the games. We're going to talk about the season. Sounds good?
I can't wait.
I want to begin with a headliner. Headlining prospect in the organization is Tyler Soderstrom, and you got him this year. And I know it ended with an injury, but how was it before the injuries?
It was impressive. I think he was still kind of, as the season was going along, getting better as a defender behind the plate. It's obviously there's a lot of nuance to that position once you get into pro ball and start working your way up the ladder. But man, he's got all the tools to stay back there. Agility to either side. He's got the arm. Like I said, like any young catcher, I think he's still learning some of the nuances and getting better with, day by day, which is what all these guys are in the minor leagues to do. But man, the bat's impressive. I mean, the bat is really fun. He fills out the uniform. He looks like a big leaguer, just like in the uniform, and he's got a real presence about him in the box. And I think that's the most impressive thing for me, Jesse. And I hope you get to see it next year was that, he as a 19-year-old, is just hard for me to believe that he was playing high school baseball, a year before he started with the Ports, because his demeanor, his presence, his approach was that advanced. And then he started coming to some power as the year went on. Like I said, the hit tool was always there. It was just really fun to watch. Really fun to watch him hit. It is just, like I said, just really, and in the Low A West this year, Jesse, there were so many really good prospects. Zach Veen with the Rockies, with the Giants, you had Luis Matos and Marco Luciano, and later on Patrick Bailey. There's others, Diego Cartaya with the Dodgers, Robert Hassel, who I'm sure you saw maybe a little bit with Fort Wayne with the Padres. It was a really good prospect league, but I really thought that Tyler stood out, especially at the beginning of the year, above a lot of those other guys. That's how impressive he was.
And then you ended the season with a darn good prospect too in Zach Geloff. How is he?
Also advanced. Rico Bronya told me he thought he could be playing in Double A right now. But I think the thing that surprised me the most about him, Jesse, was the speed. His ability to run the bases. And because you get a look at him, he's a 6'3" kid out of Virginia. Ball jumps off his bat in batting practice. Ball jumps off his bat in the game. But he was like 11 for 13 in stolen bases in like 30 games. And he could, his first to third was really impressive. Same thing with him. I think he was a really hard worker. He was out there early every day to work on his defense. And I was talking to Rico Brunya, our skipper, about, some of the differences in playing third base in pro ball versus third base in college baseball, because, college baseball, you're expecting a lot more of the small ball stuff. Third base in pro ball, you have guys really gripping it and ripping it. But I thought he was just first glance, I thought he was it's a great pick by the A's, really advanced bat. Like I said, I loved his demeanor on the field. I never saw him walk when he was on the field. He's always jogging. It's just a great energy about him. He's a really good baseball player. He's a really good baseball. There was a time there after they signed him where I felt like he was one of the best bats in the league for like a 3-week stretch. And that's coming off of playing in college, and now you're all of a sudden you're beyond rookie ball, and to be one of the best bats in the league, and certainly the most feared bat in that lineup, I thought, by the end of the season. That's saying something for how advanced he is. How about you? I know you got a chance to, and I'm sure we'll talk about one of both of our favorites, a guy who went from Stockton up to Lansing by the end of the year. I'm curious to hear your take on one of who I thought was one of our most exciting players when he was with us, Lawrence Butler.
Okay, so I was talking with Scott Steinman, the Lugnuts manager, and at the end of the year, he's going, "We've seen some great prospects in this league. This guy could be right up there with all of them." And this was after he hit a 440-foot home run to right center in Fort Wayne. This was after he cranked one out opposite field for us at our ballpark, just drove it right down the left field line, and he was stealing bases, and he was taking walks. He made a splendid defensive play at first base. He was just getting base hits all over the ball yard. And we're going, all right, he's got discipline. He's got the bat. He's got power. He's got power to all fields. We didn't have too much of a chance to see his defense yet, but I came away going, I love watching Lawrence Butler play baseball.
Oh, I could not agree more. Really exciting player. I mean, the power, like, you don't see many guys with his like package of skills, right? With the power and the speed. And he's not just fast. Like, I felt like he was a really good base runner. Like, he understands when to take the extra base, when to go first to third. He understands how aggressive he can. I totally agree. He's a super exciting player and a guy that's really put himself on the map, it seems like, this year.
I loved it because you couldn't pitch around him. He would
Yeah.
draw a walk if you didn't throw him a strike, and then he would make you pay on the bases. So that kind of guy who hurts you in the batter's box or on the base paths, that's marvelous. And we had such a right-handed heavy lineup the entire year that you popped him in there as this devastating left-handed bat. And I was ready to watch a month more of him before the season ended.
I saw that Major League the MLB pipeline threw the name Darryl Strawberry in his line in his write up. What do you think about that? I mean, certainly a similar like power profile.
Okay, so Darryl Strawberry in his prime was earlier than my baseball memories.
True. Yeah, me too.
Am I
I
wrong?
do know that like he was like a generational prospect though. So Lawrence isn't quite there yet, but he's like I just felt like he improved all year long.
I just, it's a very good question about who his comp would be.
Yeah.
I worry with the Darryl Strawberry comp. Have you ever heard of the criticism of comparing white players to white players and black players to black players?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You've got a left-handed power disciplined bat that can hit for average, that steals bases and plays first base in the outfield. I'm sure
All
we
three
can,
outfield spots.
yeah, I'm sure we can find a guy who played more recently than Darryl Strawberry, as great as the straw man was.
For sure. Well, what maybe we'll come back to that because that's going to take a little bit of racking our brain. How about another guy? I know you mentioned another guy to me in the relief role that came from Stockton to Lansing.
All right, so we got to talk about Garrett Acton. I want to know what you saw from him because here's what I saw. I saw a guy who I learned in an interview that he throws a slider and a ring finger pinky changeup, which I'd never heard of before in my life. But with the Lugnuts, all he had to do was throw fastballs, and the guys in the league couldn't hit him. And so, yes, every now and then he'd drop in that slider, but he didn't need it. He just would go fastballs, and whether he was painting with it or whether he was challenging guys, he struck out everybody. He was too good for our league. What did you see?
It's interesting because he got up to a really slow start in the Cal League or Low A West. I mean, like the first month, I felt like he gave up a home run like every outing, and then all of a sudden, a month into the season or so, he went through 3 weeks of just mowing through guys. And I got a chance to talk to him. Obviously this was after we were let on the field and everything, but I got a chance to talk to him, and he said, I kind of fell in love with my slider a little bit too much, and I really just started to go after guys and get in good counts with the fastball. And to your point, I mean, I felt like he started throwing his fastball maybe with more conviction, like there was just a little bit more confidence behind it. And I felt like when he threw it from the belt to about the nipples or so, belt to the chest, guys had a really good hard time like getting on top of that pitch and catching up to it, and like you said, then he dropped the slider in. But I felt the same as you after he got through that month where he struggled. And I think it was good for him to struggle because he didn't struggle much in college at Illinois, but it was good for him to struggle. So, he could kind of find himself that way. And I could just tell talking to him that the thought process was, okay, what can I do? How can I kind of rectify this? What am I doing wrong? And once he corrected that, he was able to, trust his stuff a little bit more. And it, like you said, it carried him to be one of the best pitchers in your league.
I mean, he's smart in sitting down and speaking
Yeah.
with him, an incredible student. I love to ask our Lugnuts players, besides baseball, what else are you good in? And immediately said, education, learning, classes. That he understands the analytics, that he understands so much more than just going out there gripping and ripping it. And then what he learned about his body, what he learned that could help himself. And suddenly it just looked easy for him. And I'll give you another guy that this happened, Jack Cushing.
Yeah.
Jack told me that in college, his slider was his strikeout pitch. And when he joined us in high A, the fastball was getting everybody out. And it was the same thing like with Acton, where he didn't need to show the slider. He didn't need to show the changeup. He had in his back pocket. If there was a guy who was ready for that well-placed fastball, well, then now see what you do with that wrinkle, and the guy is toast. But it was all about this incredible fastball command. And in the high A, just like with Acton, Jack Cushing was a master. What did you see from Jack?
I saw the command too. I mean, just a really advanced pitchability. And that's why it was fun for me to watch his numbers when he got, when he got brought up to you, because the fastball is not overpowering. It's like, 91, 92. But he just, what I liked most, I think, about Jack was just, he competes, man. Like I asked Cooper Ewell, I don't know if you had a chance to get Cooper Ewell up there for maybe a handful of games. Because I asked him, because this stuff doesn't blow you away. It's not like it's unorthodox, but I asked him, I said, hey, what's this guy's best trait? He said he's just a bulldog. He competes, he gets after you. And I think there's something to be said for that too. Like you said, I mean, both of those guys are really smart. I think they both kind of understand their strengths, and especially once you get to professional baseball, I think maybe that changes a little bit. But I enjoyed the way that both of those guys, but now that we're talking about Cushing, him in particular, he got after you. I mean, here's my stuff, right? I mean, and not relying on a certain pitch, understanding what it takes to get certain guys out. And this is, I mean, shoot, he got called up to you guys. I mean, he left us probably beginning of June, right? Jack Cushing, because he was only with you guys for a month before he was off to Double-A.
That sounds right. And in that time, he had enough time to throw a 7-inning complete game with 9 strikeouts against the Dodgers affiliate, one of the best slugging teams I've ever seen. It was great. Let me ask you about a starter.
And sorry, one more thing about Jack is the fact that he was such a big strikeout pitcher in college, and the fact that he had to adapt to getting guys out in other ways in pro ball. I just think that's a special trait. So he's going to be able to keep adapting as he moves up the ladder.
What I appreciate about a good strikeout pitcher is that they don't generally pitch for the strikeout. Yeah. They're just a guy who, when they get ahead of you, strike one, strike two, they know what to do next. And I've seen a ton of guys who they get to 2 strikes and then they throw an elevated fastball, catcher calls for an elevated fastball, and it's not even close to tempting the batter. Or the catcher calls for a slider low and away, and it's just not close. They're the guys who go, okay, 2 strikes, here's what I'm going to execute, and the batter's got no chance.
Love it. I love it. It was really cool to see both those guys have success for an extended period of time once they got called up, because they had done everything they could do in low A.
Well, a guy who I'm going to connect him to a Cushing and an Acton in terms of how dominant he was for you. But unfortunately, we didn't get to see his best stuff because injury shortened his year. Jorge Juan came out of nowhere this year.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. How many starts did he make for Lansing?
I think it was only 2. I think he only went 5 2/3, or maybe even 3 innings in the end. We just didn't see enough of him.
Yeah. He's 6'8". He gets great extension on his fastball. And when he first got called up and I was looking at his numbers, it was almost like a walk or a wild pitch per inning. If you put those two together, right? Walk, hit by pitch, wild pitch. Like you put all those together, he had like 1 an inning over his career, something like that. Probably even more. I did not see that in Stockton. I saw a guy that pounded the strike zone. I saw a guy who was confident in his stuff, created really good leverage, obviously with his frame, with both his fastball, and was kind of a power curveball. Like it wasn't a slider. It wasn't like, a big breaker. It was like a power, just like almost 12-6, kind of in the mid 80s, probably 84, 86, but his fastball was like 94 to 96, probably sitting more 94 to 95. But he's he was unhittable for like a 4-start stretch, I think. And then he had a little bit of a rough outing, and then the A's bumped him up. I know that, injuries were a bit of an issue in the system all year long, especially on the pitching side. So maybe a few of these guys got bumped up to whatever level, maybe earlier than the A's maybe wanted to. I don't know that for a fact. I'm just speculating. Yeah, man, I saw it. I did not see a guy that struggled to find the strike zone. Maybe his first start, maybe there's a little nerves there. But like I said, we went through like a 4 or 5 start stretch where he was just lights out, dominant.
He was taking on the Cleveland Farm Club in our league in his very first high A start. And the first inning was rough. Yeah. And then the second inning, he pulled out the curve and he just threw, it felt like nothing but curves, and they couldn't touch him. And I asked our coaching staff afterward what happened, and they said he was nervous. In the first
Yeah,
inning, he was nervous. He's making his first IA start. In the second inning, he smiled and it was over because once they understood that he had the curve to go along with the fastball, you couldn't sit on anything and the batters were
right.
toast. It was a joy and we saw too little. I want to stick on that point that you made. Uh, we had so many pitching injuries that I do think
Yes.
that changed the plans. Jeff Criswell, I believe, only made 4 starts for us in the end. Stevie Emanuel's the fifth rounder from last year, done early. Rafael Kelly, done early. Brady Basso, who I think, if he had had a healthy year, would have been by season's end one of the top 3 pitching prospects in the org. That's how good he looked. Done for the year. And we can continue to go on. That was one of our main storylines for the year was we just lost another great player. Michael Goldberg, not just pitchers, a great outfield prospect,
Yeah.
injured and done for the year. So that was the shame of it all for us. How did injuries affect you?
I think it was kind of a theme in the organization. I mean, I think throughout the ladder, I mean, you look at the entire organization, how many, I mean, Jack Cushing is a perfect example. I'm not saying that he's shouldn't have been pitching in Double A by year's end, but maybe, I don't know, maybe he got moved up there faster than they would have liked because they just needed arms. I mean, by the end of the year, the Ports had a staff that was, half guys that started the year in rookie ball. And some of those guys, I don't think that but they needed bodies there. They needed fresh arms. You know what I mean? You look at a guy like Osvaldo Barrios, who didn't have great numbers in Stockton. And maybe I'm missing something in the fact that maybe they felt like in his development clock, he was ready for the next level. But, just going by just the numbers test, like, I mean, his numbers weren't great in low A West. So I just think it was, and then, we talked about Tyler Soderstrom. I mean, COVID certainly played a part in our season toward the end. There were a few teams that got shut down due to COVID. I mean, I think it was just a theme throughout the organization, the entire, all year long, injuries and just the abnormalities of the 2021 season, one way or another. I mean, I think that's just, I think it changed plans if as you mentioned, with a lot of guys going down.
You mentioned your conversation with Cooper Ewell, and I'm
Yeah.
curious. One of the difficulties with the pandemic is the separation between us and the team. For me, I wasn't out there watching BP in the clubhouse,
Mm-hmm.
constantly being able to talk to people. It was Zoom interviews, or it was when things loosened up mid-season, it was full mask, but just trying to learn anything I could. What were you able to learn about the team, and who are your favorite guys on the Ports this year?
Oh my God. Well, I really enjoyed, we talked about Lawrence Butler. I really enjoyed Lawrence. Just, I mean, the joy that he played the game with, I just felt like he loved being out on the field and competing. But yeah, like you mentioned, I mean, I wasn't allowed on the field until the second week of June. And I was, obviously had to be masked all year. I didn't ride the bus once, and I wasn't allowed in the clubhouse until after the season was over. So I don't know how that went with you guys, but I wasn't allowed in the clubhouse until the season was over because I'm not a covered individual, with the Ports. So it was hard to just sit down and just shoot the breeze with the coaching staff. It was tough to just sit down and shoot the breeze with players unless it was around the batting cage. I just felt like our pitching coach, Chris Smith, I didn't have a long conversation. I wasn't able to have a long conversation with him until the second to last series of the year. And, after the season was over, I went in the clubhouse just to say goodbye to everybody. And that was finally, there was a little bit more of a camaraderie there, but it was just hard to be present and around with the, understandably so, all the protocols. I mean, the most important thing was that we got a full season or close to a full season, for the guys' development this year. But I think you'll agree with me, like from our angle, it was tough to really get close to the players and to the coaches for that matter. Like, you can do Zoom, but it's not the same as just, picking up a random conversation in person.
No. So in order to understand who the guys were, besides the Zoom or besides whatever else I could manage, it was fun to watch how the guys interacted from afar. So I'd be up in the broadcast booth and we had a player named Elvis Peralta Jr. and he would play catch with fans during rain delays. There was a youngster with cerebral palsy who, before the game, Elvis went and shared a moment, after the game went back to that fan, and I forget whether he gave his bat or batting gloves. You could just tell he went above and beyond constantly through the year for fans, for his teammates, for anybody else that he could. I saw Kobe Vance doing whatever else he could for people. And that was a constant throughout the year, was watching our guys. And
Yeah.
that was something I cherished throughout the year. I valued was it just was clear that we had such good people on this team who were getting through it.
I could not agree more. I think that's one thing that I really learned about the A's organization during the 2020 non-season that we had. And also I got to see it in action during the 2021 season. I mean, I just felt like there were a lot of good, not just clubhouse guys, but like you said, just good people you want to be around. The camaraderie was tight within the club, and also there was like an intimate relationship with the fans. And I remember Lawrence Butler made a comment to me, probably the last week of May, when I was finally allowed to like talk to the guys face to face a little bit, even though I had to have like a fence between us, you know what I mean? But he said something about how, A's guys are team guys, and I just really appreciated that. And you could see that play itself out, not just on the field, but in their interactions with each other and their interactions with the fans, with the coaching staff. You just felt like they were all pulling from the same end of the rope. I didn't feel like there was anybody out there just to get their numbers and go home.
We had a couple of guys get sent up to AAA during the year. Austin Beck and Elvis Peralta.
Austin Beck. Yeah.
And just being in the AAA clubhouse, there's potential for that to be a tough thing for a guy jumping over AA, putting into this spot. And all I heard about was how the AAA guys welcomed them in, took care of them. Carlos Perez went out of his way to take care of Elvis Peralta. And it was all about, let's talk about routine. Let's talk about how to conduct yourself, how to prepare yourself for a game. So that when Beck came back, he was a different guy. When Elvis came back, he was a different guy. And so to have that kind of clubhouse atmosphere, even at levels that in the past I have learned from experience tend to be more individualized and tend to have guys just caring about themselves and not the team. What a great thing that has been created within this organization, player by player, clubhouse by clubhouse, with gratitude to the scouts and the coaches alike.
I just think it's such a cool organization, because I think loyalty is, I remember talking to Bobby Crosby during our 2020 non-season, right? Now, he said there's definitely a certain amount of loyalty to the A's organization, and vice versa from the A's organization to people who have, been a part of the organization. I think, like I said, I just think, that plays itself out, like you mentioned, from level to level to level to level, and it fosters a good environment for young players to come up in, and gives them their best chance to succeed, and not just individually, but as a team. I mean, being in Oakland right now, I grew up in Oakland. I'm sitting in Oakland right now. I mean, you hear about that all the time. Now, Chad Pinder and Matt Olson and Matt Chapman came up together through the system, winning it at different levels together. And I just think that it creates such a great clubhouse atmosphere, and, not just in the clubhouse, but also, like you mentioned, the community.
Let's consider this part one, because we have to cut things short right now, but there's so much more for us to discuss. Our favorite moments from the year, stories that might have popped up, and all sorts of specific players to get into and tell their stories. So are you all right to reconvene at a future time?
Of course.
All right.
It's the off season, man.
That's exactly right. We got time. We got it. And we had this long season that is just so good to break down. So I appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, of course, Jesse. I know I was a little bit late to get here, but I appreciate you waiting on me, and I'm excited to put a bow on this and pick it up again in the near future.
To be continued. For Alex Jensen, I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler. Thank you. And let us know what you would like us to talk about.
Absolutely.